Okay, so as our wonderful host said, we are doing or having a panel discussion all about kind of glazing into our metaphorical crystal ball, predicting the future of AI. You know, are they going to be robot butlers or an intelligent new species? So the aim here is to imagine what the future might hold for humanity and our increasingly intelligent creations and explore the fascinating trajectory of AI, artificial intelligence, while asking the question, will AI serve us as a powerful assistant, you know, seamlessly integrating into our lives as these robot butlers, or are we on the path to creating something new, an intelligent entity with capabilities beyond current comprehension? So it's going to be a great chat. I've got a great bunch of panelists. We've got lots to get through, so I'm going to go straight in by asking guys, I think a great place to start would be for you guys to introduce yourself. Tell me about your experience with AI and how it's currently impacting your area of work. So Miguel, I'm going to go with you first.
Sure. Thanks for having us. This is fantastic. Excited about the conversation. I have been an entrepreneur, worked in global executive roles, and I was head of technology for a couple cities people might have heard of, New York City and San Francisco.
Yeah, I think we've heard of those.
And AI has been, the truth is that AI is a hot topic now, but it's been present in the background, if you will, of technology for a long time. I think now what I'm doing in my current role, we're building a startup to use AI to make those engagements and those experiences in cities, in the built environment and in the service delivery better, faster, easier. So initially on that, using it as a tool framework, but looking forward to talk about you know, where the path goes.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Miguel. Shireen.
Hi, I'm Shireen, and I've been lucky enough to work across sectors. So I currently teach a class at the Stanford Business School on the future of cities. But I was the Chief Innovation Officer for San Jose, which is the largest city in Silicon Valley, and have worked with a variety of startups in the Valley as well. And, you know, we're just seeing AI everywhere. So 98% of companies are utilizing AI now. It's really going to be a mega wave of technology similar to what the internet did 25, 30 years ago. So there's really not a space that it's not impacting.
Yeah. Okay, Tim, on to you.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Tim Papandreou, I'm the founder and CEO of ETA Advisors. And we work mainly with governments, startups, and corporations to help them navigate the emerging technology space, which includes AI, but also robotics and new energy storage systems as well. I've worked both in government and in the private sector and the technology sector for about 20 years now. And what I've been really excited about is how we've moved from moving the AI world and the world of technology from the hidden world of like the IT department of the software space into the physical world. So my area of work is basically making AI physical. So we can see it in the world around us, either in the buildings or the space between buildings, and how they interact and make cities function better. And like Miguel and Shireen, I've worked actually side by side with Miguel in San Francisco as I was the former chief innovation officer for the transport system there, and also worked at Google and GoogleX, where we launched the world's first self-driving car technology called Waymo, which is physically embodied AI in a robot.
Yeah. And last but not least, Elie.
Thank you, Lucy. First, being the only panelist living in Saudi Arabia, I can tell you guys, welcome home. Home of dreamers and doers. I'm Elie. I'm the CEO of QSSA and Robotics. We're a Saudi company based in Riyadh. Our bread and butter is localizing technologies in Saudi and exporting emerging technology to the world. Our most iconic innovation is Sarah, the humanoid robot. It's a very popular robot. We're currently building a factory in Sudair City, 7,000 square meter factory, to manufacture robots, AI, drones, autonomous vehicle, and export them to the world from the heart of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. So as you can tell, guys, we have a variety of expertise and backgrounds here. So very well placed for this conversation. So from, you know, utopian to dystopian use cases, there's a lot of chat around AI, right? So when you envision the future of AI, do you see it as evolving primarily as a tool to serve, you know, a practical role in our daily lives, you know, like automating our tasks, you know, robot butlers, that kind of thing? Or are we on the path to creating something that could or has the potential to evolve into an entirely new intelligent species with its own capacities and decision-making processes? What do we think? Anyone can jump in. This is an open conversation.
Let me start with this one. So robotic butler is, in my field, way behind us. We're more advanced than that.
Yeah.
So we currently in Saudi are deploying big projects. We're automating food factories. We're automating airports. We're automating nearly everything you can think of. Smart cities, smart parkings. So AI is coming in fast, and robotics is just very big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the robotics piece is what we talk about sometimes because it's a physical manifestation of the AI, but I think that, to your point, has been there for a while.
Yeah.
And I think it's now the use of AI tools embedded in things where we don't see them, right? Where it's making decisions
Yes.
passive to us, right? And so I think whether it's that dystopian or utopian reality, I think some of it is making sure that we're paying attention to where it's being used when we don't see it.
Yes.
Like I said, the robot is easier to put your hands on and think about what it can and shouldn't do. But these things that happen in the background and making decisions and setting trajectory on societal concerns when we're not seeing it and feeling it, I think is what we have to really
and I think that's a sign of true AI, you know, when it seamlessly integrates into our lives and it's helping us be more efficient and it's bolstering our lives in whatever capacity. And that's the beauty of AI. I think the movies and blockbusters have got a lot to answer for. A lot of us think, you know, AI is going to be a physical embodiment, this robot. And I think that's the confusion, I think sometimes, not with people who work in tech, but I think maybe the general public and things like that. And there's that confusion between what, you know, the robot butler, but robot butlers technically do come in other forms, not the physical, you know, blockbuster robot form, you know? Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's useful to think about this in phases. So right now we're at the very, very beginning of the AI revolution, and we're going to see huge productivity gains in the next, 2 to 5 years, right? Whether that's building agent chatbots that can make you work with your customers much more efficiently. You're going to cut processing times for things like construction, renderings of your built environment dramatically. But there is this prediction around artificial general intelligence by all the leaders of the major companies in the Valley saying that's going to actually come in 2027 or 2028.
Soon.
And that's, having intelligence that's on par with humans. And then there's artificial superintelligence, which is the next phase. That's, can these sort of artificial beings surpass us? And that's an open question. I do think the predictions around artificial general intelligence are probably overblown.
Yes.
It feels like there's so much data that's not digitized. And today the data that these models rely on are just what's out there. And so there's severe limitations, I think.
But do you think we're kind of running before we can walk in terms of, we're thinking far into the future, but we should be maybe honing in on what level of artificial intelligence we're on now rather than thinking about the next step?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that we need to be practical with how we're using it today. But even if it is years down the road, the path, the direction is being decided and set today by the rules and the guardrails that we do or don't set today. That one of the challenges with things, even I'm going to get it slightly off topic just to make a point, but even things like bias, right? Bias in the human context, it's bad, but it takes so much time to manifest that you have opportunities to rein it in and recontrol it. Bias in algorithm or bias in AI it achieves scale so quickly that you're headed down that direction before you might realize.
Yeah.
So I think the practical applications are here and now today. I think that some of what's been said is true, that some of it might be overblown in terms of timeline, but I do think it's really important that we're very thoughtful about how we set the direction now, because that's going to continue and the pace is going to be incredible.
Yeah. But I think with any technology, we're always 2 steps ahead, really, aren't we? And I guess this is just an example of that. Yeah. So, as we further develop AI, with tasks in our homes and things like that, how are similar technologies scaling up to benefit cities and real estate? And what impact will that have in this space?
I think I can start with that one. When we, back in 2016, it was everybody, all the journalists, no offense, but all the journalists were saying that autonomous vehicles are going to happen next year. All the companies were saying the same thing, and
I
it was
remember.
just super hype, right? And it was going to take over all the transport in the world. It didn't happen in 2017. It's now 2024, almost 2025, but Waymo has actually commercialized its service, and now there are at least 3 cities that are operating paid rides on a daily basis. So it took about 8 years longer than what people said was going to happen, but it did actually happen. Now we're seeing that in the realm of like city building, city planning, city construction, most of city planning and building is about words, and it's code, it's compliance, it's building construction guidelines, it's planning policy, etc. That's perfectly suited for the current state of AI. So having a planner at a desk trying to understand and remember the 150,000 variants of a code is impossible, right? Because they make mistakes. And so it becomes very subjective. We have an opportunity now where a lot of the generative AI tools that will be used in decision making, whether it's strategic master planning or day-to-day operational planning, will make anybody in the team an expert because they can draw from the body of knowledge in real time. So hopefully we're going to see less subjectivity and more objectivity, and we're going to see less prescriptive planning and more performance-based planning. So basically meeting these criteria, you should be pre-qualified and pre-checked. And AI tools are being developed as we speak that will basically allow you as a citizen apply for a planning permit and pretty much know on the spot whether you're going to get it or not, or will correct it for you. That will cut out 6 to 8 months of backwards and forwardsness. So just time alone is one area. The second area is in construction. So having construction, basically all the documentation, all the design work, etc., takes months and months and costs lots and lots of money. If we could reduce that by 10%, 20%, 30%, that makes housing affordable. Like there's these huge nexuses that we're going to see with AI tools, and we're just starting at that point. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
I can also add on top that regulation is playing a very big role in this.
Yeah.
Like in Saudi, we do have our autonomous vehicles ready, but can I put them on the road tomorrow? No, because regulation is still not finalized. So, for example, if an autonomous vehicle did an accident, insurance will come.
Yeah.
There is no regulation.
Right.
The police will come. What happened exactly? No one can tell. So even in the UAE, we do have autonomous vehicles ready. Technology is nearly ready, but without proper regulation set, it's slowing down the process also.
Yeah, yeah. So, and obviously we're here at Cityscape in the context of smart cities, real estate construction. To your point, Tim, are we thinking of AI as this collaborative tool that's going to really, benefit society, benefit humans in our day-to-day? But in this industry, do you think it could take on this more autonomous, adaptive role when it comes to things like urban planning, infrastructure, and all the different multifaceted things that come in the world of construction and real estate?
We're going to have to, because just to put in context, in the next 25 years, we're going to increase our urban footprint by a number we can't even imagine. So this is the first time in history that more than half the world's population lives in cities. And by 2050, 3/4 of the world will be living in cities. That means about 2 or 3 billion people are either shifting from the countryside into cities or being born into cities. That's literally, we've never built that kind of urban form in that time frame. We're going to need all the help we can get. We're going to need AI, we're going to need tools, we need robots, we need everything, because that is going to cause massive pressure on our mega cities, but also our new cities as well. And so I'm really commending what's happening out here in the halls. These massive developments you're seeing everywhere, they're not nice to have. These are imperative. And we need to look at this at a global scale as well. So not only is it's going to be important for the countries that take this on, but for the countries that are not yet ready, we're going to have to also level them up as well.
Yeah.
So it's a global equity issue as well.
Yeah.
One universal truth right now is that, in cities around the world, permits take too long, the timelines are incredibly long, there's a lot of pressure, right? And so having these tools to supercharge your citizens, your civil servants to be able to process these things is essential, as Tim said. And counterintuitively, what you're probably going to see is like people can do, rather than cutting over the workforce, you might actually see an increase in the workforce because people can be so much more productive, get out of these backlogs, and then as construction starts to boom, you're going to need still more people.
Yes.
In some cases, and that's what you're actually seeing in the insurance markets, for example. That's what a lot of CEOs are saying about their customer-facing functions.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I think one of the fears, the sensationalist headlines around AI is AI robots, they're going to take our jobs. But if we think more about this collaborative nature of AI, it's like we can see this as something that's going to complement what we do, and we're going to work together. So based on that, do you think there is this risk of AI overshadowing and replacing these uniquely human skills? And will this, is this going to affect our path? Are we going to think about AI as utopian and dystopian?
Well, there's going to be winners and losers through this process, right? I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and certainly there's going to be certain functions that will go away over time, and certain places where we're going to see growth. And so we don't know how that's going to shake out. On balance, most likely you will see a reduction in the workforce. I don't see how we won't have that process happening, but certainly in the short term, I think it's going to be really beneficial in a lot of sectors.
I feel like it's going to open up other opportunities as well. It's a natural evolution, isn't it?
I think it's a shift, right?
Right.
This isn't the first time that technology threatened the workforce.
You took my thought out of my brain.
Exactly. In fact, the internet threatened to do that, and we were all going to be jobless.
Yes.
And now most of us sitting up here work in it. So the net was a creation of opportunity and jobs. So it's a shift of skills for sure. But I think that it's a matter of how you adapt to that.
Yeah.
Email was going to do away with the postal service.
Yeah.
But then package delivery transformed it, and it's more important than ever, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's all the matter in which the horizon in which you're looking. Short term, there will be things that change, and there will be certainly people who can't make the shift fast enough. But over time, someone's going to have to manage those AI tools. Someone's going to have to develop them. Someone's going to have to. So I don't think that the human race is going to be professionally extinct. I think it's going to have to adapt for sure. And I think we have to make sure that we're managing those technologies in that responsible way.
Yeah, for sure. Tim?
I was going to say, adding to what Miguel and Shireen saying, we also have some demographic time bombs behind us as well. So many people don't realize this, but we have declining birth rates worldwide. We no longer have an overpopulation issue. We actually have a declining birth rate issue that's coming to many, many countries very quickly. Aging populations, which need care. And we also have a skills and a job shortage on certain industries. We have one of the largest truck driver shortages worldwide now, not just in the Western countries, it's worldwide. And this is where autonomous technology is basically coming in saying we can close these gaps. So between autonomous technology and robotics technology, there's this interesting things happening in the background while again, not to Miguel and the journalists are saying this is like the end of the world, there's some reality checks of we're having aging populations who need physical care. There aren't enough young people to take care of these people growing up. And there's not enough people who want to do the regular mundane jobs, whether it's factory work, truck work, whether it's the day-to-day, restaurant type work. These are all going to be required to be replaced or taken over by robotic assists of some sort.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a whole new generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are going to be growing up fully AI conversant. So to Miguel's point, this is their future. So it's that interstitial transition of certain skills will be taken over by others, but I don't think it's going to be as people think it is going to be. I think it's going to be very, very different. And we're just in that middle phase right now. We're not exactly sure, but it makes great headlines.
Yeah, yes it does.
This is one of the topics we were discussing at the ITU with the United Nations like last month in the AI for Good Summit. It was a big debate. It took nearly 2 hours. And the conclusion is we're evolving. That was the conclusion. We're simply evolving. Like, we thought that we're going to teach cybersecurity, mechatronics, electricity in university in 2024. So no one has seen this coming, and we're simply evolving.
Yeah, that is the statement that kind of sums up, really, isn't it? It's natural evolution in all areas of technology, from cellular networks to mobile phones to the way we communicate, to the deliveries and things like that. It's just natural progression, isn't it? So we just have to suck it up and deal with it. So we can't talk AI without talking regulation. Obviously, that's incredibly important. So how might regional variations in AI governance foster innovation, by allowing different territories to experiment with policies tailored to their unique societal values, their economic needs and technological approaches? And what lessons do you think could be learned from these diverse approaches? Who wants to take that one?
I could start. I mean, I think working in the regulatory space for nearly a decade, it was really clear that we had two types of regulatory formats. One was the prescriptive regulatory format, says that you must do this to do X, Y, and Z, always failed, never worked. And then there's the performance-based regulation, which show us what you're doing, show us that you're safe, show us that you're able to work in the real world, and we'll give you access to the right-of-way. That's always been much more successful because it's evolved with the public's ability to adopt the technology. Public adoption shouldn't be underestimated in regulation. You can regulate, but if the public's not ready, it's not going to happen, right? So we needs to be working in concert. And that's where like pilots and performance-based criteria works really, really well. I actually am really glad to see that AI regulation is very regional right now.
Yeah.
The UK has a very specific AI policy. The EU has a very structured regulatory framework. The US is a bit more open. And the Middle East and Asia and China, again, very, very different places. I think that's important because we still don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And if we had a global AI policy that covered everybody, that was identical, I think would actually slow and we would disadvantage and advantage countries against each other. And I don't think that's the right thing to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. These countries, these territories using the technology in different ways. And to your point, there is not a one-size-fits-all mentality for this. Do you think eventually that's where we're going to head to? 10, 20 years, when we've really got a stranglehold over how AI works in our society, how we're working with it, the ethics behind it. Are we going to streamline that regulation and all? No,
it's impossible.
Adhere to the same rule.
It's impossible.
Yes, I agree.
There's something called sovereignty, right? These countries have sovereignty over how they operate their regulatory framework, their societal framework, all those sorts of things. So the internet, again, as a parallel, isn't universally regulated. The way that the internet is used or accessed, or the rules around that are different country by country. There's similarities, and there's certainly, I think there's value in having some global conversations about what's working in some places and learning from each other so that you can take it home and adapt it in your context, in your regional or local context. But I don't think, global policy or something like that.
It's a
not only
recipe
not only
like disaster, maybe.
Choke the innovation, but it's not. I don't think that's what most people are thinking.
No,
I do disagree a little bit in the sense that I think there'll be aspects, not all AI models are the same, right? So you can think about AI in the military or defense space as different than in the construction space or in the private sector. And so I do think that in certain areas, especially around the military and defense, that we will see cooperative agreements across countries because the dangers are catastrophic, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, and I also think that like the pace of this is so fast that it might warrant more cooperation. I don't know that we'll actually get there, but in the first 2 months that ChatGPT was released, there was 100 million users.
Yeah.
100 million. And so 2 months. And these models are getting put out every few months, right? By Anthropic, by OpenAI. And so, it's worth saying like letting it rip and having an open policy may not be the best situation.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything to add?
From my side, I believe I stand a little bit with Miguel because living between robots, I see that there is no regulation. You see countries weaponizing robots already, using robots to shoot people. Here in Saudi Arabia, we're fighting weaponizing robots. And me personally, I'm fighting weaponizing robots. So there is no global regulation. I don't believe I can see it in the coming few years. So everyone is doing whatever he wants, from wherever he wants, and just release it in the market.
Yeah.
Which is not good at all.
Yeah. I think what we're hearing is that because it's early days, each country is going to basically stake its claim. And what's really important is that I think we're going to get to global standards, but we may not get to global regulation. And the difference between standards and regulations, the internet has a global standard, but the way it's accessed is regulated country by, as Miguel said, country by country. we might see the same thing happen with this. And to Shireen's point, there may be cooperative agreements. We're not a globalized society as people think we are. We're going to become much more regionally polar.
Yeah.
And we may have like 3 or 4 alliances in the world around this AI space based on where our geopolitics is going, which is another topic for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's treaties, right? Particularly in the military applications. There's underway where countries are attempting to agree not to use mechanized or robotic soldiers in the military context. But even in that context, unfortunately, there are some countries that are potentially not participating in that.
gonna adhere,
So I think,
yeah.
and I'm not trying to get into that conversation today, but the point is, absolutely, there is a need for alliance and cooperation and alignment. The reality is, while several might, GDPR covers a bunch of countries, but not everybody.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see some of those things where there will be alliances and frameworks, and there will be outliers. And I think we just have to be aware of those outliers because that they could perform and manifest differently.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, this is a shared experience, and there's things to take away and learn from what other people are doing or what not to do. It could not necessarily going to be positive; it could be a negative as well. So it'd be interesting to see that trajectory over the next 5 to 10 years and how we're all going to collaborate and work together on that. So kind of moving back, obviously, to the context of AI regulation in cities, construction, urban development. How can policies address the balance between leveraging AI-driven innovations for things like 3D rendering and smart security for construction and housing, while also managing risks related to cybersecurity, drone threats, and privacy? How do we get that balance right?
Well, I think one is we're probably not going to get it right at first.
Baby steps, trial and error.
Sure.
But one of the things Anthropic did in their AI safety model, which I think is really interesting, is they categorize each of their new models based on risk levels like you would like chemical materials, right? So they have like red is absolutely needs to be regulated. Green is, it's fine. We don't really need anything. And so I do think for like cities, there should be a similar assessment framework.
Yeah.
And what we did in San Jose back in 2018, when this was like really, really early days on AI, is we created an algorithmic assessment framework whereby everything was fully transparent. And the models, if a private company wanted to come in and use an algorithm in the city, we did a full impact assessment of that and published that for the general public. So you could see like how the decision was made, what would happen with data. And everybody knew what was happening. And even today, go on the website, the San Jose website, and see like what was rejected, what is implemented. And we need that level of transparency in cities for sure.
Yeah.
I'd say that, and Miguel will remember this, but a lot of the talk on AI governance and policy sounds really similar to when we were working on cybersecurity frameworks, right? Because it was this whole new area, we weren't sure about it. And the cities had to basically take a step back and say, what data do we have? Where is it? Who has it? Where is it stored? How is it stored? Is it safe? Is it standardized? Is it protected? And that is a very similar way of looking at this as well. Cities are going to have to look at what kind of data they have and what they use AI for. And we have parallels today in the enforcement part of the city. That data is highly, highly sensitive. In the healthcare side, also highly, highly sensitive. But in the permitting of what got permitted and what got, not very sensitive, right? So there's gradations, I think, to Shireen's point, that having some sort of index or some sort of hierarchy or framework will be super helpful. But they're just starting to think of this now because there's 2 facets of this that are really exciting, at least from my perspective. I nerd out on this a lot, but there is the city going to the citizen side, which is all about being much more responsive, transparent, etc. But there's the democratization from the citizen back to the city saying, hey, I've reviewed your planning process, or I reviewed your ordinance, and it's not equitable. And here's how. Now they can put that into ChatGPT and they can show them where it's not equitable. Or parking requirements and times here like work for X, Y, and Z, but not for the people that are here. So there's a way to actually have a level conversation between the citizen and the bureaucrat that you couldn't have before. And that is exciting and unsettling for some people. So I think that's where a lot of the interesting conversation is going to have, is that both sides now will have equal access to the information, whereas before it was very one-sided.
Yeah, and I guess that helps build up the trust, doesn't it? That
Exactly.
transparency helps the public feel that they are involved, they're not being left in the dark, and it's all laid out on the table for you.
Especially for the budgeting process, like having transparent budgeting process. Now you know where the money is going, where it's being spent. Not every government wants to have that transparent. So, that's going to be really citizen empowering to know where is the money going, where are my taxes?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, the kind of citizen empowerment. That's something that to my experience, I'm not in the construction real estate space. That's just something that I've not really seen before. So this is taking us on a really positive path. Yeah. And back to that collaborative element that we were talking about earlier. So what about AI and energy? I don't know if that's your area of expertise, but how will AI impact things like energy demand, distribution, targets, grid design, and things like that? And do you think AI could eventually be trusted to make autonomous decisions on energy distributions? What are we seeing in that space?
It's already happening. California we almost had a blackout about a year ago, and we ended up having we didn't even have a brownout. It's basically everybody loses their power for a couple of hours. So we have these digital thermostats, these smart thermostats.
Yeah.
Some are called Nest, some are called other companies. And there's enough of them in California that are tied to the grid that the grid actually was experiencing problems. And these thermostats basically talked to the entire system and said, can you shave off 1% here, a 0.25% there, a 10% there, enough to avoid a brownout, right?
Yeah.
So we're already seeing this kind of like energy load demand scenario happening with AI. We're going to take it to the next level where we're going to basically have the grid become a lot more smarter and understand people's day-to-day uses. So a lot of your smart appliances that are now talking with each other will also talk to the grid and find out when do they need the power most,
Yes.
or when do they need water most. And then that shaved loading means that the whole system gets distributed and you don't end up having these like peak outages anymore. So that may become a thing of the past. And at the same time, we're also seeing a lot more energy demand, because AI needs a lot of power to compute. And so data centers, we have about 8,000 data centers in the world. We're going to have about 11,000 in the next couple of years. Those need a lot of power, and they're competing with electric vehicles, and they're competing with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin mining. All three want that power. So the question is going to be, who gets it? That's a policy decision.
Yeah, nice. Shireen.
Just to build on the data center point, the demand for data centers is going to skyrocket around the world. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's a massive commercial opportunity, as well as it's really driving the revival of nuclear energy. So in New York, for example, 3 Mile Island is being recommissioned. You have Microsoft working with Helios, which is the new fusion technology. And so you're going to see a real push around fusion. And so there's some really interesting things happening in the energy space.
Yeah.
And the question is, these companies are going to have a lot of pressure to do this in a way that's green. And so there's some interesting companies like Crusoe that is taking building data centers next to these obscure plants way out that's venting energy and wasting that energy, and then they're plowing it back into these data centers so that the companies have low carbon footprints. And so I think there's some interesting things around energy that are going to pop up in the next few years.
Yeah. And, understandably, I think a lot of big companies, they obviously have more access to this huge amount of computing power. So what about the SMEs and the kind of small players? How do you think those companies are going to kind of grab a piece of the pie? How can we democratize that?
I mean, the large companies have always they'll always have a foothold. Mm-hmm. But even those data centers, my startup doesn't own one.
Yeah.
Right? We use compute on AWS and we use GPUs on AWS, and we're competing aggressively, leveraging AI tools in that space. And I'm probably never going to build a data center.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that the cloud environment has been a very maybe accidental but important precursor to everything that's been said, because that was the democratization, or at least the access piece to that infrastructure that's critical to competing or innovating in this space as that demand continues to go. Now it's going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
So it certainly will be a cost issue, but it's not necessarily an access to capital issue. You don't need $100 million to build its data center to launch a product using these tools anymore. So I think that that's a very fortunate precursor, but I don't know, in your space, that might be different, right?
We can share data centers. You can buy online data centers.
Right.
But if you want to build your own, like in Saudi, 1 megawatt is costing us nearly $12 million. And megawatt is doing nothing.
Yeah.
There is a need of 500 megawatt currently in Saudi for AI. And again, power is a major issue. So, by the way, Saudi government took a decision, I guess last year, that 80% of the government data should be localized. You cannot host them on any cloud anymore outside Saudi for data privacy. So this will get a bigger demand. Again, power versus need, it's gonna be an issue.
Yeah. So I realize we are kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to jump towards the end now. You know, we've kind of touched on this. Over the years, there has been a lot of predictions, haven't there, about where AI is going, where it's going to do, what it's going to do, how it's going to bolster our lives. How realistic are some of these predictions, and what's prevented AI from reaching some of those predicted milestones made years ago? We did touch on this, but yeah, I'd like to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. Anybody? Everyone's looking at you, Tim.
I mean, I think what's going to be exciting is that we are going to see. It's easy to predict things because as a technology person, as a futurist, we can say this is what's going to happen. But physically making that minimum viable product, that first MVP, and then getting it out there is one thing. Scaling it is another thing. So we're going to see a lot of these new innovations come out in AI, whether it's in the software space, in agentic AI, which is what we mentioned before, where agents will be doing a lot of we're going beyond chatbots, where agents can actually perform tasks on your behalf. They can do things on your behalf, route, book, and pay things, for example. Those have become everyday opportunities. The robotics piece, the physical AI piece, that's going to take time because robots have either wheels or 2 feet or whatever it is. And there's a big debate now whether it's going to be humanoid versus wheeled robots. And I'm sure Elie's going to have his opinion. But you know, in the warehouse space, wheels have won because that's just going to be the end of space, right? But in other applications, it may be different. So I love that we're going to be trying and seeing and experimenting over the next couple of years. Will we get to artificial general intelligence in the next 2 or 5 years? I don't think so. Yeah. There's just too many other things that are in the way that will pan out. But we will get to smarter and smarter applications of it. And I think that's kind of how everything else has been done before in the world. So we have big ideas, big dreams. We go through the trough of disillusionment, and then we start slowly applying, and then we start scaling. And I think we're going to have a similar situation.
Yeah, so excited.
To keep it short, we still have 2 minutes. So from my side, it's a loop. Everything is moving with the flow. No one wants to be the next Nokia. Yeah, especially
or BlackBerry.
So all the companies are evolving, but step by step, because as we said, regulation is an issue, need is high, and cost is still high on data centers and AI. So it's moving, but baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps for sure.
I mean, it will happen. It's a matter of how fast and on what timeline. But in the next 5 years, the big companies have pledged about $1 trillion of investment into AI. So, you know, there's massive amounts of money here. There's a lot of things that are going to change. There's a lot of, you know, the models are only as good as the data that they have. And there's a lot of data that's still analog. I mean, a lot of parts of the world, most of their data is still not online. And so there are limitations. You can create synthetic data, but you're sort of creating a loop of the same information. Yeah. And so, and then you're going to also have, you know, hiccups, whether that's like a physical cyber attack or some major event that will start to slow things down in some ways. And so I'm curious to see where it goes. It will happen, and we don't know.
Yeah. Where would you like it to go? In an ideal world, if there wasn't any barriers or anything, what would you personally like to see?
I mean, I personally would like to see all these people around the world who, say, for example, don't speak a major language, who have no voice, you know, indigenous people or other people, suddenly be able to participate in the world, right? And in the modern world. And I think there's a lot of people that would benefit from it.
Yeah, that building that sense of community and togetherness and connection. And what about you?
Well, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said. I guess what I can add to that is I think the pace might change, and the trajectory, the ultimate end game might change when AI starts building the next generation of AI. Right. So far, we're talking about the first gen, and that we're building the gen that we're designing and controlling. If we allow it to create the next one, and the one after that, and the further we get distanced from it, I think a lot of those intentional slow down, the things that we might do intentionally to manage it and control it, or other unintentional consequences might happen, and it might happen really fast, and it might get a little out of. So I didn't mean to drop the mic like that at the end, but V2 might be the one that we're actually paying attention to.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, you can speculate and we can predict, and we can have all these like ideas about what's going to happen in the future of AI. All we can do is think about the foundation that's being laid right now, and that's going to give us that vision as to what's going to happen. But ultimately, we still don't know. I think as people who work in technology, we're all too familiar with the fact that we can be going this way one day, and then we can just do a sharp left, and we're on a completely different path and trajectory. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with AI. It is incredibly exciting. There's lots of exciting things in the pipeline. Yeah, there's some scary and nefarious elements to it as well. But I think with the right mindset, the collaborative effort, you know, we really have the potential to create something fantastic, not just in real estate, you know, but just in all types of industries, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
And on that note, guys, I'm going to end our wonderful discussion. Please give it up for my all knowledgeable and brilliant panelists, Miguel, Shireen, Tim, and Elie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And I hope we've given you lots to think about, and enjoy the rest of your day and the show. Thank you, guys.